Exploring the unknown, from conspiracies to mysteries, you are entering the conspiracy sector.
Welcome everyone to this very special program. I am your host, Aubrey Batchelor. Sailing this amazing ship of knowledge with me is Chris Jacobs, and you are entering the conspiracy sector. Well, we hope you've been well since the last episode, and I can't believe that we're already it's a month into the new year. We're here into February, almost Valentine's Day at this point. And it's been a bit since we've seen you, obviously, since the New Year's prediction episode, but figured we both got busy, give a little bit of time, see what happens this first month, see what conspires across the whole world, which, we could talk all day long about one event probably that happened in the last 24 hours. Shows you how hectic the world has been. But how you been, Chris?
Oh, we've been doing okay. We've actually had sporadic ghost occurrences happening here off and on. It's become quite a nuisance, actually. But where you'll get like you'll get waves of them, especially around the new moon and the full moon times, and it becomes really obnoxious. Especially in the middle of the night when you get up to pee or something, and then there's something around. You're like this. Some people get spooked. I get a little irritated because it's happened so much, but it's
Lose a little bit of
uh
sleep.
yeah, and then you're trying to figure out what's going on. And we've had a couple demon ghoul occurrences in the neighborhood because somebody died. But and that's I found out ghouls and demons are different. You have demons, which harass and create chaos, agents of chaos, and you have ghouls that are the cleanup crew for death energy. And I didn't know the difference between the two of them. And ghouls come around death, and somebody dies, they kind of swarm around the energies. It's like flies. So, but we've had that. We've had some. The energies have been peaceful some days, chaotic other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, otherwise, me and Joanna went out to the Outer Banks yesterday, and the energies were actually pretty good out there. Um, Pretty
Well,
peaceful.
sounds like a
No,
good
no.
time.
Yeah. The beach actually tends to clear up a lot of garbage energy. If you get engrossed in some junk energy or get ungrounded, go out to the ocean if you live close. So it works every time.
I wouldn't mind trying to metal detect out there, see what we could find. Hopefully it's not a haunted object or something that has an attachment to it that you dig up. But
Most of them out here probably would, because you have several generations of wars. You have from Civil War to Rev War to
hmm
French and Indian War time frame. You have all of that down here. This is technically the south of the Mason Dixon, and it's like, yeah, you technically have a lot of Confederate stuff here.
everything that's residually hanging on. And speaking of that, I was checking out our video from where we did a live ghost hunt at Governor Hunt's tomb. And you want to talk about sporadic, you want to talk about a lot of things popping through. And if you guys
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen that video, we did a live broadcast together instead of just seeing us on split screens here when we got together in Phoenix here a couple years back. And
Mm-hmm.
if you go down and search, through Chris's video history, it's pretty good show when it comes to voices popping through. So if that intrigues you at all, I go back and watch that. But today we have a pretty good show lined up for you, like always. But we're going to be digging back into history, just like Chris got done talking about historical events that have been forgotten about, and things along that line. And we don't usually tell each other what we're going to talk about when it's like this. So, he picks a few mysteries out, I pick a few mysteries out, but it's bound to be a good show.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Oh
want
yeah.
to lead it off with whatever you have to talk about today, you're more than welcome to.
Okay. And as we start this show, I always open this circle to true benevolence with no conflicting agendas. As of this moment of time, near across time, space appropriate. So I always do that because if there's an energy work involved, like later on in the show, if people are curious, I open and close the circle. This makes it so there's no chaotic garbage that happens during when we do the show, whether it's mental, physical, any of that, energetic. So
Technical, having like we usually always get some.
technical, yeah, that tends to abate a lot of that chaos. When I do that, no, if you put that kind of spell in the air, basically you're saying you're not allowing this. It tends to work. Your energy firms it, and you basically hold the space. That's essentially why I do that. I do this on all our shows, and it tends to work. Okay, yeah, this is actually where I was going to lead off with this. These are going to be like some forgotten histories, certain cases that maybe even involved some memory wiping of certain extent. And these are a couple of them that I personally had experience with. These were both before I even met you, Aubrey. This was quite a while before, and long ago, long before we ever did anything like this on air or anything like that. And this is a curious case that back in, I believe it was the 1994, I want to say. And I was 14, and I was with my father and my stepmother Karen in Chicago, in the Chicago area, and this was in a condo that overlooked and saw Lake Michigan and the Sears Tower, the whole bit there, and right on the lake, on Lake Michigan edge there. What happened was this was a strange incident nobody knows about, nobody's heard about, and it just kind of just got either mind wiped, like in Jupiter Ascending when they mass mind wiped people, or it Mandela affected completely out of existence. There was and I'm one of the only ones that actually remembers this taking place. There was this week stretch where the temperatures, believe it or not, this was like in the middle of summer, but normally you'd expect maybe 100 tops. Literally they hit over 200 degrees.
Holy cow.
And this is something that people don't know about. People think this is nuts, but this got to the point where literally the leaves on trees were curling and steaming, and then they would burst into flames. I saw this actually happen myself. It's like almost like a solar flare rained down on that part of the planet at that time, or some kind of solar ejection or something. Because what happened was, my father and Karen had to still go to work during that time frame. And they told me, do not go outside during this time. And eventually they just took the rest of the time off. They're like, no, we're not doing this either. What happened was one of the days, something told me, go check this out. So I went down the elevator all the way down the bottom, and even the first floor that was heading out to the outer door, you could feel this immense heat, like when you open an oven door and it hits you in the face, kind of thing, or open a car door when it's heated up. Well, I walked outside, and the sky was a weird color. It was like an orangey, like reddish, like flame, like
kind of like your shirt a little bit.
Yeah, it was like this. And what happened was, I'm going, what in the hell? You'd think you were on Mars or something. And looked around. People are going, there's hardly anybody out, but people that were out were kind of looking around going, the fuck? It was like that. So went back inside. I just wanted to see what that felt like. And I went back inside, and the air conditioning in the building was having a tough time with it and everything as well. And the next, that wasn't the next day, over the course of the week, you could see there were death tolls from it that were rising. And they said, over 1,000 people died. It was mostly children and elderly people, that died from that. A week after this ended. Somebody was performing some mass experiment somewhere, because it ended and everything went back to normal temperatures, went into like the 70s and 80s. And the sky was blue again, and everything was fine. Newscasters got on. Not one of them spoke about it. And completely oblivious, went to everything. Not one record on it at the time, even though the internet was fairly new at that point in time. You could still do basic searches and whatnot for things. Looked it up, couldn't find it, even called a few people, couldn't find it. And it was like that scene in Jupiter Ascending, if people have seen that, where you see this alien battle taking place in the city, and Mila Kunis's character says to Channing Tatum's character says, "Hey, how are they going to hide this?" And then all of a sudden, you see the building being regenerated, and then nobody remembers anything. He goes, "Sometimes there's a few stragglers, but people think they're crazy, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like in Harry Potter where they do the Reparo spell and it repairs cities, like in the
Mm.
Fantastic Beasts first movie. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. They did a mass memory wipe, so there wasn't a war between no magic or regular humans and the wizarding world. So and they wiped the memories of everybody through the water, essentially. Yeah, and that was actually a bit of disclosure in a situation like also the Jupiter Ascending scene, because that's essentially what took place. That particular type of concept? Somebody screwed around, violated some galactic treaty somewhere, and then somebody else stepped in to fix it, and then nobody remembered it, and then me being the straggler out that did.
Mm.
Even my father and Karen did not remember the incident at all,
Mm.
and they're like, "You sure you?" I asked them later, "Sure you didn't dream that?" And I apparently was of a frequency or something that couldn't be manipulated. I don't really know what happened. This was a strange story that I was like 13, 14 years old. And that was a weird story that we've never really told anybody. And I was believed by some people when I told them this, but it was
Glitch in the
exactly like
Matrix.
yeah, it was like a glitch in the Matrix type of thing. That's how some people interpret it too. Where, oh well, just like in the movies, the Oracle says aliens, ghosts, weird events, weather events. It's like that's the Matrix doing something it's not supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And so one could argue that. I don't think we're in a simulation. I believe this was just somebody from outside the planet screwing around somewhere. And it's just like in Elder Scrolls. There's these galactic treaties in Elder Scrolls. The Sigic Order has with the Daedra in the lore. In reality, it's like a galactic federation with with other people on the planet. There's like certain treaties that are involved that that you can't reveal over a certain amount of information, or you can't actively get involved on the surface of the Earth, openly. Like in Elder Scrolls, the Daedric Lord Molag Bal started screwing around and doing experiments on a village, turning them into zombies and doing stuff like that. Sigic Order steps in and goes, enough. We can't. Nobody can have this crap. You can't run experiments on people. You can't be out in the open, manifest on Mundus, which would be like Earth, the Earth plane, or Midgard, kind of like that. So you can't do that. That was disclosure for what goes on in the outer world, like and here. So that and dimensionally based things. That fell into this category. It also falls into the I don't know category. I can only speculate based on the information I have.
Mm.
But but that was the experience that I experienced then. It was completely forgotten experience by everybody.
Mm.
And
Strange.
yeah, that was one of the it was pretty creepy actually. If you could see, it was like the sky was like you were on Mars. And or like if you look at the show Moon Knight, where the one Egyptian god starts shifting the stars around, and everybody sees something, and then the other Egyptian gods have to wipe the memories of the people that saw it and stuff like that. It's like that. No, so it's a little bit in that category too. If you want to like pop culture references and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
too. But yeah, that was probably one of the creepier events that I've experienced. That and there was another one that was wiped from people's brains as well. This was a little bit later in time. This was sometime around 95. And we were in Naperville at the time, Naperville, Illinois. And what ended up happening, my father and Karen moved from that condo to the apartment in Naperville. And a couple of years
So
later,
close in time.
yeah, so it
Somewhat
was
close in time.
relatively hugging the same time frame. If people also want to reference where I go on, the 90s, part of the 90s were considered to be a big dimensional invasion period. Other channelers tend to concur the 90s were a major energetic event that took place at
Kind of
the
at
time.
the end when things were kind of somewhat fine, and then
Yeah,
shebang.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, all this energy gets dumped on us in the 90s. And what we were seeing in these events were those conflicts going on, or those outer things that we wouldn't normally see. Like from the 80s to the 90s, people consider this a harmonic convergence, but there's a darker side to some of these energies. There's more of an invasive version of this. I won't go completely into that; that would take too long. But suffice to say, there was a drastic change between the energies of the 80s and the energies of the 90s.
Kind of combines with the rise of technology too, in the future of AI, like what we've talked about too.
Yeah, because that's part
Machines
of it.
that are
That's
supposed
a
to
major
help, but
part
they
of this.
dumb down people and take over.
We did a show. One of the Sasquatch episodes we did was a concept called the dummening, based on that. We called it the dummening, like the happening, because the happening
Yeah.
trees were controlling people. So yeah, that's the energies I'm referring to, is essentially the dummening. And the event that took place a couple of years later was we were watching TV, and all of a sudden this weird chain of events just takes place, far above and beyond what you would expect a nightly or afternoon news program to have. There was a police chase down the highway, normal, some crazy person goes careening into traffic or something like that. We're like, okay, whatever. But this guy that was in this vehicle was humongous. It was like he the cops were chasing, but they were keeping their distance, like they were afraid of this person. And I'm going, okay, what's going on? There's something intuitively, you knew something was different about this. All of a sudden, this guy gets out of the car, and it was a bigger vehicle. It wasn't like a small; it was more like a larger car, and gets out. He's at least 10 feet tall.
He's
And at least like an alien type being, or a super soldier, because they have super soldiers out there too that can grow in size, like the Spartan program in Halo. It's the same thing. Where if people want to reference that, we've done some Halo episodes too. But this guy, he ends up crashing into this ditch and gets out. Cops are keeping their distance. They have their guns drawn at them and everything, and they're keeping their distance from him. And you could tell these police were terrified. It's like the cops in like some Marvel movie taking on like the Hulk or something like that. That's the reaction these cops gave this person. And you knew he was from some side program, kind of, again, like the Matrix doing something it wasn't supposed to. Like two worlds colliding, like our how we perceive things and some of the dark projects that are out there, and two things collide. Yeah, like CERN, or like basically like secret space program, or super soldiers, things of that nature. It'd be like if you had a super soldier with nano enhancements confront a soldier like over in Iraq or something like that. The two worlds would collide. They'd be very different, vastly different from one another, even though they come from the same origin point here. But this is what that was. This guy gets out. He's wearing like all black, like a big long coat, has long hair, very long hair, and he's at least 10 feet tall. And we were all witness to this. My father, Karen, we had a friend over at the time, and then me. And we watched this for it went on for, I would say, at least a couple of hours. And as the cops are getting close to this guy, they couldn't do anything. This guy walked up to them and basically was like, puts his hands out like this, and he's like, okay, what are you gonna do? Kind of thing. And you think you're big, you're tough. All of a sudden, this giant vehicle shows up, this big black vehicle. Truck, like long, I mean,
almost like
huge.
a Men in Black experience, sort of,
Yeah,
big tall guy, black uniform, black vehicle. Just kind of seems reminiscent a little bit.
Yeah, this is exactly who took him into custody. Actually, these guys in black, soldiers, regular sized ones, like us, grab this guy. A bunch of them grab this guy. Like a SWAT team, but no labels. But they were like the Men in Black version of SWAT, And they pick up this guy, like maybe a dozen guys get out of this bigger vehicle. They throw this guy into this big vehicle, and they lock the door and they take off.
Hmm.
And one of the stupidest comments came out of the commentator's mouth moments after this happened. Not the fact that all of this took place and it was weird. Said, "Oh my God, that guy was wearing black." And the other commentators looking around, going, "What?" Yeah, he can do that. It's the fact that he was fighting the cops. How about and the fact he was 10 feet tall. How about we focus on that? And the next day, it was barely mentioned on the morning news. There was like a little remnant there, and it was gone,
Hmm.
and nobody remembered it up.
Go figure.
And even family members at the time did not remember it happening again. They said, "Chris, are you sure you didn't dream this?" That's the same response I got, and it was in the same state. It was in Illinois at the time, and I thought this was actually very interesting that these two things took place, and they were within a couple year time span at the beginning of the 90s and mid 90s, and it coincides with what we understand about some of the energies that happened around that. I didn't know about any of this stuff at the time. I didn't know about galactic wars. I didn't know about galactic treaties. I didn't know about Men in Black too much, things of that nature. Aliens, ghosts. I knew some things, but I didn't know a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so this came from the other angle of not knowing those things and experiencing those things. And yeah, I found those very, very interesting. They were it was creepy. Both of them. The one was on TV. It wasn't as creepy, but the creepier one was when the sky changed and everything. So that when I was 13 or 14.
Definitely
And
strange.
yeah, strange incidences that people just don't remember, and you don't know if it's a timeline change or if it's some like you said, like a glitch in the matrix type of thing, or something, or dimensional activity that everybody's mind's wiped, like in Harry Potter. You don't really know where the origin of that lies.
What do
But
you feel like that was?
I felt it was some experimenting going on, that somebody was violating some treaty somewhere, and at least in the first one with the sky changing, they were running some hedge bet or experiment. Somebody else called them to task on it and stopped it, and like some law enforcement somewhere made them stop. And the same goes with the giant 10-foot tall guy. He was obviously a super soldier, because you can get that big in the secret space program, like Master Chief in Halo. It's the same concept where they nano enhance them, genetically enhance them in tiers, and they will get larger. That's like also like the Incredible Hulk with the super soldier serum and Captain America. So it's the same difference. But that falls under secret space program. That one does. The other one falls under experimenting somebody from out there that violated some rule somewhere. They weren't supposed to be doing something here. And just like the famous incident with, they called it the Battle of LA back in the 40s, where there was this UFO that was sighted, and the army was shooting at them. That's a prime example of somebody violating a treaty somewhere and appearing when they weren't supposed to.
Yeah. Causing chaos and confusion.
And a prime example of how a treaty like that would operate. One of the dumbest sources, believe it or not, actually gave disclosure on this. It was the old Super Friends cartoon from many, many years ago. I don't know if you remember that, but it's Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, the whole bit, and the Hall of Justice, the whole bit. Well, Superman spots a UFO in the middle of a turnpike. It was hovering over traffic, and he rushes out there going, "Oh, you're not supposed to be here." And so the others goes, "Oh, you're not supposed to be here. I have to remove you. You're out in the open." And so it was like he was enforcing those treaties. And essentially, he was the symbol of trying to change things down here, saying some of those things, just like Lex Luthor was supposed to be corporate greed and corporate, basically corporations, and Superman was supposed to be like Clark Kent was supposed to be, had alien
the
parents,
honest, God-fearing, protector.
Yeah, and not putting up with that kind of crap. But they changed it a little bit. If you go further back in the past, they had him more aligned with something else, like more status quo, like the American way. This is the American way kind of thing. Well, this But this, he bounces off it because it's a fake. It's a stage thing. It's a balloon. He bounces off it, so they tried to make a haha joke out of it. But that's the thing. Uh,
Hmm.
that to me was more of a disclosure of they were trying to basically say, oh, this isn't supposed to be here. This isn't supposed to be here. And when I encountered aliens myself in our room back in Arizona, I had the same reaction when I physically saw them. It was more like you aren't supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that it was like this big rage or anger that came forward. It's like you're not supposed to be here. That's what that came out as. Not not the no fear or anything like that. Just another side came out saying this isn't right. You don't belong here. And
Mm-hmm.
so obviously there's some programming conditioned in everybody to think that way. So along those lines from some of these experiments. And I find it interesting that I remember some of these, but if I question people from around that time frame, they don't remember a thing. Uh,
Hmm.
in some of these instances, like a mass memory wipe of some kind took place.
It's kind of like a Mandela effect type thing too. People might remember it a certain way, and then others do too.
Mm-hmm.
From the same event you're talking about, but it's remembered differently. You know.
Mm-hmm. And I remember the same time frame. That's where the multiverse comes in, where people jump timelines and such, and time alterations take place, like with Mandela himself getting killed in prison, but yet here he
Yeah.
was later on. So it's the whole multiverse effect as well. That's where that ties into as well. And I'm open to the fact that that was multiverse too. That was like
Mm-hmm.
maybe a parallel universe colliding with ours somewhere, and I only remember the other timeline. Yeah, I'm open to that too.
This is what it's like when worlds collide.
Exactly, exactly, and conceptually and legitly and literally. So that
Yeah.
those were a couple creepy stories that I had that nobody's heard me ever talk about. So
No, those are good. Those are
yeah,
good. I'm gonna piggyback off of you.
all right.
And I'm going to start off with a UFO event that a lot of people have forgotten about, but I believe this to be Canada's Roswell event.
Okay.
And it is, let me get this ready here. I'll share the screen over and la di da. Only we'll go right here.
All right.
So it's known as the Shag Harbor UFO incident. All right. And this is an article from barringtonmunicipality.com. So it's kind of a local area. You can, if you, pretty area too, that part of Canada is just gorgeous. So if you up that way, you can visit this site and on things to do here too. But an extraordinary event in 1967 would particularly put the small fishing village of Shag Harbor on the map. Located at the southern tip of Nova Scotia, this rural community would be host to one of the best documented UFO events in the past 40 years. And there's only, I think, 250 to 400 people that live in that area, so not a lot, but everybody about seen it though, in the area. Named after the shag, a bird of the cormorant family, the harbor was literally left off most maps of the time, but that would be changed once and for all. The tiny fishing community has always had its stories of giant sea serpents, man-eating squid, and ghost ships. The list of local colors would see one more addition to its list, a story of a visit of a mysterious flying craft of unknown origin. The craft would visit the waters of Shag Harbor, permanently stamping the village's name in the public eye. Orange lights in the sky. The first indication of this mysterious occurrence would come from local residents who noticed strange orange lights in the sky on the night of October 4th, 1967. And I also know that there was a Canadian airliner that a pilot who reported lights, up in the sky. And then, it goes down to the harbor and the locals witness it. So there's a couple of different things. I don't know if this article will dive into it, but they ended up correlating, a lot of people thought it could be a plane, because a lot of people, don't believe in UFOs and just assume that it's a man craft that wrecked. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people reported a plane crashing down. Well, come to find out, looking at all the air records, there's no missing plane in Canada that time frame of those course of those days, so it couldn't have been a plane. But the first indication of this mysterious occurrence would come from the local residents who noticed strange orange lights in the sky on the night of October 4th, 1967. Most witnesses agreed that there were four orange lights that evening, 5 teenagers watched these lights flash in sequence and then suddenly dive at a 45-degree angle towards the water surface. The witnesses were surprised that the lights did not dive into the water, but seemed to float on the water approximately 1/2 mile from the shore. Witnesses at first thought that they were watching a tragic airplane crash and quickly reported as much to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which was located at Barrington Passage. Coincidentally, RCMP Constable Ron Pound had already witnessed the strange lights himself as he drove down Highway 3 en route to Shag Harbor. Pound felt that he was seeing 4 lights, all attached to one flying craft. He estimated the craft to be about 60 feet long. The response, Constable Pound made his way to the shore to get a closer look at the phenomenal sight. He was accompanied by Police Corporal Victor Werbecki. Constable Ron O'Brien and other local residents. Pound clearly saw a yellow light slowly moving on the water, leaving a yellowish foam in its wake. All eyes were glued to the light as it slowly either moved too distant to be seen or dipped into the icy water. So this thing, UFO into a USO, unidentified submersible object. And, a lot of people theorize that aliens and UFOs are actually living on Earth, and what better part to live than the bottom of the ocean, only
Well,
what?
that's definitely true. There's a lot of USOs.
Oh, 10% of the ocean or something like that has only been explored, Look at all the open territory that they could have under the waters. Constable Pound made his way to the shore to get a closer look at the phenomenal sight. He was accompanied by Police Corporal, I already read that, excuse me. So Coast Guard Cutter 101 and other local boats rushed to the spot of the sighting, but by that time they arrived, the light itself was gone. However, the crewmen could still see the yellow foam. So this is indicative. You remember the incident, the Rendlesham Forest incident, where they had like that gooey light and they touched it and get radiation burns and things of that nature from the object. So nothing else could be found that night, and the search was called off at 3 a.m. I'm pretty sure that they probably had divers and people like that in the waters trying to find anything that they could find, evidence-wise. But, the RCMP ran a traffic check with the Rescue Coordination Center in Halifax and NORAD radar at Barcaro, Nova Scotia. They were told that there were no missing aircraft reported that evening, either civilian or military, like I was stating earlier. The following day, the Rescue Coordination Center filed a report with Canadian Forces headquarters in Ottawa. This report stated that something had hit the water in Shag Harbor, but the object was of unknown origin. The HMCS Granby was ordered to the location where divers searched the bottom of the ocean for several days, but without positive results. They didn't find a trace of anything. Too bad that they couldn't have scooped that yellowy foam, in the water and done testing on it back in the day. But soon the story of the mysterious crash of Shag Harbor died as quickly as it had begun. This is why I chose this subject to talk about today, because it's kind of a forgotten UFO event. A few people know about it, but that is until an explanation was that a Russian spacecraft had crashed, which would explain the presence of a Russian submarine in that area. That was the other strange thing. Russian submarine was seen in Canadian waters shortly after that. So did they pick up something? Were they involved in something? Either
or it could have been a craft disguised as a Russian sub. I've seen UFOs take the forms of planes and shift a holographic form before too.
Yep, so like a combination of things. Yeah, it's kind of like the Nazi Bell aircraft. Back in the day. These were also the rumor of American involvement in the follow-up investigation, but there was no official statement from the United States. So Chris Stiles was a MUFON investigator, and the case intrigued him so much that he decided to search for more details. Stiles found the names of many of the original witnesses through newspaper clippings and was able to interview many of them. Stiles was assisted by MUFON investigator Doug Ledger. These two men would uncover some extremely compelling evidence through their interviews. They discovered that when the divers of the Granby finished their work, the case was not over after all. The divers, along with other witnesses, related these events. The object that dove into the waters of the harbor had soon left the Shag area, traveling underwater for about 25 miles to a place called Government Point, which was near a submarine detection base. The object was spotted on sonar there, and naval vessels were positioned over it. After a couple of days, the military was planning a salvage operation when a second UFO joined the first. The common belief at the time was that the second craft had arrived to render aid to the first, the Navy. At this time, the Navy decided to wait and watch. After a week of monitoring the two UFOs, some of the vessels were called to investigate a Russian submarine that had entered Canadian waters. At this point, the two underwater craft made their move. They made their way to the Gulf of Maine, and putting distance between themselves and the chasing Navy boats, they broke their surface and shot away into the skies. These extraordinary events were corroborated by many witnesses, both civilian and military. Unfortunately, the reports were given off the record. Ex-military personnel feared the loss of their pensions, and civilian witnesses feared ridicule, which is a common occurrence of all UFO events, people that tried to talk, and their privacy being invaded. The unusual events of Shag Harbor command an important place in the study of UFOs. There is little doubt that something unknown crashed into the waters of Shag Harbor on October 4, 1967. And here you can learn more about it. And it'd be kind of neat, too, because there's a Shag Harbor UFO Incident Center on Highway 3 in Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia. So it'd probably be like a little mini museum about the incident of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Also, the fact that they cited a sub there. There also are government craft as well that were created for both space and water as well. Anybody that's been in the secret space program knows that there's these aircraft carrier slash sub looking invented by William Tompkins, the secret space program as well. Believe it or not, Lake Street Lake, our Ghost Box session, he came on there 2 months after he passed away. If people want to go look at that. And we did a channeling with him on gic.show as well when he came through to us at one point. He did also make mention of you, Aubrey, as well in the whole thing because of the Ghost Box incident. But with the craft, those can go air and sea. UFOs can go underwater because it's the same as essentially like a space-like environment. So so they can go both. And also had an incident where my mother and I heard a UFO over the house in Lincoln on Hartley Street, and we heard a telltale hum. People hear the hum all the time with different UFOs from the anti-gravitic technology. And we also shortly thereafter heard a plane. My mother looked out the window and saw a UFO turn into an aircraft. So it was holographically shifting to where somebody knew somebody was looking, and they shifted it immediately. But somebody also wanted us to see that. So so they can shift. That Russian sub was more than likely one of the craft, or somebody in a program that wanted to approach to see what was going on. So like a Men in Black investigation team, like the guy in the truck, so getting thrown in the truck, same thing. They have collections crews that if there's a crash, there'll be teams that come in to actually do the CSI work on the forensic work on it, that they are a different level of forensic teams. So they come in, and also there was a famous insider by the name of Clifford Stone. We did a channel on the same episode of GIC with him about the collection crews as well. That's maybe worth expanding on for another episodes about the UFO collection teams and stuff. But that actually exists. It's basically their forensic teams that show, or their CSI like teams that show up in the aftermath of a UFO crash. That, and yeah, I find some of these cases very interesting. How quickly they are forgotten. Also, especially if people want to avoid ridicule, or they want to keep a job or something like that. They tend to just kind of let things slide and just go on as business as usual too. And these people in the programs count on that reaction.
Yes. It adds to the confusion pot a little bit. Was it true?
And the disinformation pot,
yeah. And, that's kind of been my New Year's prediction, too, since we just did our New Year's prediction episode. And the past few years, I always have said that there's going to be a ramp up of UFO activity, and it has come true little bit by little bit. And I think it's only a matter of time until we have another incident similar to like UFOs over the White House, similar to the LA invasion, similar to another one that I'd like to talk about here right now, to be honest, just to keep the UFO theme going, is the Lubach Lights. And this is an article from everythinglubach.com. So kind of another local, website that, has dove on into the history. Lubach, Texas, on August 25th, 1951, a group of Texas Tech University professors gathered at one of their homes for a casual hangout. Around 9:20 p.m. it happened. The professors reported seeing about 20 to 30 blue yellowish lights fly above them. They said that the objects were bright as stars and were traveling in the southern direction. In a 2003 interview, Pat Allgood said that the same night he saw a very similar formation at the drive-in movie. All of a sudden, my date and I saw these lights coming over the screen, said Allgood. It was just a formation of lights about the size of maybe a little bit smaller than a frisbee. This is way before drone technology, unless if that was a technology in the 50s that the public just got, a generation later, two generations later.
Yeah, that's
That was
sometimes
being
how it is
experimented.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it could have been like an early, if it was man-made drone technology, but I don't think so. A few days later, on August 30th, Carl Holt Jr., a freshman at Texas Tech, said he was standing in his parents' backyard when the two V-shaped formations of lights flew over him. I grabbed my camera and set the exposure where I wanted it and went back outside and waited. And then two more lights came over, said Hart Jr. I think I got two pictures of one and three of the other. Hart Jr. processed his images and took them to the Lubach Avalanche Journal. The newspaper was hesitant to publish them at first, but eventually did. Hart Jr.'s images were published in Life magazine a few months later. The group of Texas Tech professors contacted the Air Force about the sightings because they were confident with what they saw were not meteors. We're talking about professional people who apparently were impressed enough by having seen strange things in the sky to go and try to observe them under scientific conditions. And Donald Burleson, a retired professor from Roswell, New Mexico. I mean, how convenient is that?
Mhm.
These events would later be known as the Lubach Lights. In declassified military documents obtained by everythinglubach.com, both the professors and Hart Jr. were interrogated multiple times about the sightings as part of the U.S. government's Project Grudge investigation, later known as Project Blue Book. They went over and over my story too, I guess, trying to catch me being inconsistent, but apparently they were satisfied eventually, said Hart Jr. Federal investigators eventually realized Hart Jr.'s images were unedited. The declassified documents revealed they contacted nearby military installments like Reese Air Force Base to confirm if the lights were military aircraft or missiles. Air Force officials confirmed the lights were neither one of those. Shortly after Lieutenant Edward Ruppelt, leader of the Project Grudge, we've all heard his name,
Mhm.
investigation determined the lights were plover-like, birds that had reflected from the Lubach's newly installed street lights. Yeah, right. It's a weather balloon, I tell you. It's a weather
Or
balloon.
Chinese squid boat. That's another one they like to throw out there
Yeah,
too.
anything that you can think of, light refraction off the water for Shakar, whatever. According to the declassified documents, investigators met with federal game warden to discuss their plover-like bird theory. The FGW doubted the lights were birds because plovers were not prevalent in that Lubbock area at that time of the year. Local biology experts said the objects were too big to be birds also. After 70 years, the U.S. Air Force has not revised its plover-like theory about the Lubbock Lights. And after 70 years, this is a forgotten event, minus, 0.03% of the population that's interested in UFOs. Often in the popular culture, the phrase UFO has been associated with aliens, but it really just stands for unidentified flying object, which is true, But said current Texas Tech professor Thomas Macaron, and many kinds of unidentified flying objects are things that are just normal, natural phenomenon, but we don't understand what they are well enough, based on the kinds of observations we have of them. In his 1956 book, The Report of Unidentified Flying Objects, Lieutenant Ruppelt wrote they were not birds, refracted light, or spaceships. They were positively identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomenon, which, who knows? I don't think so. I think that, something sporadic, especially in formation like that. I know birds fly in V formations,
Mhm.
but I don't know. It's very strange. I thought that'd be worth digging out of the
Oh yeah,
archive.
that's worth digging up like that. Yeah, because some of these stranger cases that are like kind of shoved under the rug, those are the ones you need to talk about, or the ones that they're covering something up as a
Especially if you see
result of.
Project Blue Book attached to its headline.
Or MUFON or something like that later on, and yeah, this the some of these stranger incidents, like what happened to me, and some of them, like the first two, I personally experienced, so like with all those instances, and another one. This one is based on a TV program. People are probably familiar with the Phil Donahue show from back in the day, and back in the 80s and 90s, and this was something I saw. I believe this was also in that same time bracket as those other two incidences. Relatively, I don't remember which year. I just remember it was the beginning of the 90s. and it was roughly in the same time bracket as the other two. And when I was watching this one incident where two guys had seen a UFO. This was on the East Coast here, and I can't remember what state. I want to say Delaware or Connecticut. I cannot remember which one. But these two guys walking down the beach, and it shows some heavy programming that are on some people as well. There's a UFO that flies over fairly low, and it was a triangle shaped one, a black triangle shaped one. And this and one guy looks up and goes, "Oh my God, this is a UFO!" And this other guy just starts laughing at him. And he goes, "What are you laughing about?" He goes, "That is a 747, and it is very low in the sky. What are you talking about?" And this guy goes, "You don't see the black triangle that's up here?"
Hmm.
And this was all on this Phil Donahue show where he's interviewing these two guys. And what happened in the aftermath when they got this show together, where Phil Donahue at the time wanted to perform a kind of a public experiment, a double-blind experiment, just to see if there was something up with either two, like psychologically, either up with either one of these two people, you know, the one that saw it, the one that saw something else, because they both saw two different things. Like with Rendlesham Forest, the two men saw some certain two different things because it has to do with encoding and decoding what your brain is used to seeing, or if there's programming or telepathic garbage in the way, some interference in the way in some area. Like the one guy saw the UFO and the other guy saw a plane. So he wanted to actually do, and people forget this ever happened too. You never saw this again, where the audience was given a printout. This guy got a picture of it, and you could clearly see it was a black triangle,
Mm-hmm.
and gave a printout to everybody in the audience. And he goes, "Simple test. I want everyone in the audience to take a permanent marker and trace the shape you're seeing. And this includes the two men sitting on stage.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see this." And this was a genuine UFO incident. This guy, everybody in the audience traces the triangle. He goes, "Hey, this may sound dumb. Just do this for me, please." And the guy saw the black triangle. He took the picture and traces it. The guy that was sitting in the other chair, the Donahue says, "Show me the picture." He had the shape of a plane with the wings over the top of the triangle, because that's what he was genuinely seeing. His brain was decoding it wrong, encoding it wrong. And everybody else, he said, "Show it." And they showed the triangle. He goes, "See, they're all seeing this. You are literally the odd man out that's not seeing this." And he goes, "I'm very curious as to why." And so this shows encoding, decoding is an issue too, with when people see something, their brain has trouble decoding it. They want to know, their brain is not seeing it correctly. It's just like, or comprehending it correctly. One of the best examples of this was in Star Trek Voyager, where Q takes Janeway to the Q continuum, and he says there's a civil war going on in there. So she perceives everything around her as like the American Civil War, the clothes, the weapons, the houses, grass, trees, everything. He goes, "This is not actually what this looks like. It's what your brain is comprehending and perceiving, and you're decoding it wrong. Uh, I see things as they are. You're seeing me in the garb. You're seeing me all. And it's the same thing. It's an encoding, decoding issue. That's why there's sometimes conflicting stories on the same incidences, because people are perceiving it wrong.
Hmm.
Or they might be seeing a plane, or they might be having their brain messed with by telepathic aliens or AI or what have you, to see the imagery or the object wrong. And it's a genuine concept. Like even some insiders say they've looked at aliens and seen something weird, like the Scarecrow from Wizard of Oz, or I've even seen like what looked like Thor in the Avengers and Iron Man. I didn't know, like when I'm projecting, I even saw in an incident that I've talked about with clients, where I was remote viewing a factory where I've seen these figures walk in, and they look like circus clowns. I'm going, why do they, why? And I even telepath to these guys. I said, "Why do you look like that?" And well, you look like clowns with a little dingle ball and all this other stuff. You look like you're carrying a balloon. No, you just don't see us right. And it's just like, I found out Isaac was screwing with my perceptions because he was calling them clowns, but it was like, But then I blinked and looked again, and they looked kind of reptilianish, and the pad they had in their hand looked like a red balloon, like egg shaped. It was like a phone like, but it was egg shaped. This is encoding and decoding, and this is actually an important issue right now because people will see an incident and it might not seem quite right. It may seem like a glitch in the matrix to somebody, uh, but it's a encoding decoding issue. Like people that have seen aliens and they don't see the faces right. Like you see those old religious books, those Station of the Cross books, where nobody has faces. Some people have seen that in real life when they encounter aliens. They're not decoding it correct. So you think your brain would know that, if it's a bipedal person with two arms, two legs, a head, all of that, that the brain would be able to decode it correctly. But that's what's out there right now. There's a bunch of funky energies right now. There's blobbish energies. There's AI garbage screwing with people's perceptions and negative telepathy out there right now. And so that's an important issue that keeps getting swept under the rug. This is why there's psychological stuff going on by the government, because they don't want people to think that it's completely real, but unless it's their own narrative. Like,
Yep.
we'll give you disclosure, but believe this narrative over here.
Yep.
And so this is also why you see images of aliens everywhere. They're trying to get you to decode and encode the species they want you to align with, like Greys. They want you to align with Orion, Eben, Zeta, all of these types, instead of the other multitude of races out there that look more like ourselves. And also people in the multiverse, introverse, that's world within world, or Agartha. They don't want you aligning with the good races. They want you aligned with the ones that made the deal with the government back in the 50s. So that would be the Eisenhower Treaty that he signed to trade technology from the aliens in exchange for people being abducted by them. So it's a well-known incident, but it aligns with all of this material. I could go on and on. That could be a show by itself, but it's like, but yeah, that's what I know. I went on, but that's what I wanted to compare some things. So,
I like it. Do you want to each do one more story, then maybe Popeyes again?
yeah. Did you have one more? You could do.
Yeah, I got one more. Let's go with this one right here. This is kind of a strange one. The dog suicide bridge. Have you ever heard about that one?
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah, and it's kind of a minorly forgotten topic. Not a lot of people know about it, but what's really going on at the suicide bridge? And this is an article by Nathan Chandler from HowStuffWorks.com. In Dumbarton, that's kind of a weird name. In Dumbarton, Scotland, there's an ornate 19th century bridge called the Overton Bridge, but its claim to fame is somewhat sinister. It's nicknamed the Dog Suicide Bridge. For decades, dating at least back to the 1950s, dogs have been jumping from the Gothic-style bridge that crosses a 50-foot, 15-meter ravine. Many news outlets have reported on the bridge, and it's inspired at least one full-length book. Some reports set the number of flying furballs in the hundreds, while others cite fewer. Numbers aside, there's no disputing that a lot of dogs have died at this bridge, and no one knows exactly why. Sometimes dogs survive the fall, but the fall suffer terrible injuries instead of perishing. But others perish soon after their plunges. In at least one instance, a dog allegedly jumped from the bridge, survived, ran up the slope, then jumped off once again. But what's inspiring this rash of jumps? The sweet smell of wild animals. In 2010, animal behaviorist David Sands visited the bridge and concluded that dogs certainly weren't killing themselves on purpose. He figured that since most of the dogs that jump are long-nosed types with especially keen odor tracking skills, wild animal scent may be a trigger. Perhaps the dogs can smell or see wild creatures scurrying below the bridge, noted Sands, and maybe the bridge's construction, which has tapered edges, might make it look like a safe, flat plane from a dog's point of view, also contributes to their confusion. He actually had a documentary, and he said he thinks it's highly likely in all the cases here at Overton Bridge that it was curiosity that killed the dog instead of the cat. Still, this part of the country is full of superstitious folks. Some of them believe that there are paranormal factors at work driving the dog to jump to their deaths. One theory is that a grieving widow, the White Lady of Overton, and how many cultures have like a white lady, like hitchhiker, phantom hitchhiker, things of that nature, maintains a ghostly presence at the bridge, stirring the dogs into a death frenzy. Another even darker take harkens to a terrible event that occurred in 1994. It was that year that a 32-year-old father threw his own baby, whom he was certain was the Antichrist, into the gorge below. The baby died the following day, and the father was declared insane and committed into an institution. Locals say that dogs in almost every case tend to jump from the same spot that the baby was thrown from. Perhaps they say the terrible ordeal left a supernatural rift of sorts that affects dogs' behaviors. Whatever the case, scientists don't seem to believe that dogs are intentionally offing themselves because their Prozac prescriptions ran out. Suicide is more of a creation of the human condition. Until the mystery is solved, perhaps local dog walkers should consider mandatory leash laws for anyone who approaches the bridge. So, very strange case. Is there something paranormal at work here? Is there something natural at work here? Nobody really knows the correct answer. Everything's up for debate.
I'm thinking it's a little from column A, a little from column B. You have a natural meaning like an energetic intersection type point that would enhance like even ghost experiences, like a ley line intersection. I can't prove that part, but that's just theorizing at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Where well, you had that baby that was thrown off. That was the first incident. Then the dogs, since they protect children, probably are sensing this and they go diving off after a ghost, essentially. So or an imprint. It's essentially an imprint that now keeps compiling because the dogs keep dying. So and they keep committing suicide. So therefore, it rubs the same wound over and over again. It's like rubbing salt in the wound. So
Mm-hmm.
it's essentially like an infectious thing on a PowerPoint. More than likely, that is a PowerPoint that of the Earth that is being enhanced right there.
Hmm.
They and people think, oh, PowerPoints are generally good. That's not necessarily true. Like Sedona, people think it's a PowerPoint. Oh, it's good. No, wrong. It's enhanced. Whatever you happen to bring into the space, it enhances it. You could
Hmm.
literally use an Earth PowerPoint for good or evil. So it's just like years ago in the game reference. People might recognize this Diablo 3 when that came out years ago. The fourth one was very recent, but the third one, there was an incident where you go into this black castle, and it was known for a king that was called the Black King or Black King Levick, I believe they called. In the lore, what happens is you see these little recorded magical books that were in it, where the king was making a law going, I don't know why my court wizard chose this spot for our county seat. And what happened is the court wizard was just like some of the immortals of history that me and Joanna were talking about, where they would ill-advise kings like Henry VIII or the Emperor Nero in ancient Rome. They went nuts because there was some dark force at work there. What ended up happening? These were on PowerPoints, by the way. This happened where you saw the progression of this guy was slowly being manipulated, like the Emperor manipulating Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker turning him into Darth Vader. What happened was then in the end, you see he puts his wife in a guillotine, just like Henry VIII, and she goes, "I've never lied to you," and he cuts her head off, and then the
Mm-hmm.
wizard goes, "Oh, she lied to you right up to the bitter end, sir." That kind of thing. What he was doing was he was accessing a PowerPoint, even though it's a fictional story. It's a real concept where you get on a PowerPoint and people think PowerPoint good, just like with the lore of the Vader lore. People assumed he was coming in to balance the Force, and though that means good. No, that means we're wiping both sides out and we're starting over. It's like entropy. So this is essentially because he wiped out Sith and Jedi. So it was so in this case, this PowerPoint or some kind of conception like that, where it's something that maybe you're not maybe perceiving it correctly, or maybe you don't have, like, if something's prophesied, maybe you might not have all the details correctly. Just like Yoda says in one of the Star Wars movies in Revenge of the Sith, maybe we've misinterpreted the prophecy, kind of thing. So
Could very
in
well be.
this, people assume PowerPoints are always good. Like PowerPoint's dimensional intersections are always a good thing. No, they sometimes, most of the time, can be neutral, and they can be hijacked by either side.
Hmm.
So, and the dog bridge, and I know I went kind of off on a tangent, but the dog suicide bridge is one of those where you keep rubbing a wound the wrong way, and if a dark spell was used, and there are dark spells where you can repeat and regurgitate the same event over and over and over and over again on a person. You can do dark magic that way and make them go in a repeating loop, or a repeating loop in life. In this, it's because there was a residual, baby dies, insane type of thing happened on a PowerPoint, and it went in a repetitious loop. Uh, Again, that's a theory that that's an intersection point, but it's acting like one. So it's acting like a ley line intersection. So if somebody wants to go there sometime and test this point, looking to see if it is an earth line intersection there, that would be great. But that's just a theory of mine based on the behavior I'm seeing in those cases. Because of what I know about what PowerPoints are capable of, or earth chakras are capable of. So that I found it fascinating. It's sad because, you know, people, there was even one person at that bridge had their dog on a leash. Dog chewed through the leash, then jumped off the bridge and died. And so even had it was a leather, one of those really strong leather bound leashes. And dog chewed through it, jumped off the bridge, died.
Weird.
So they were caught. The dog was caught in a loop. Somebody would have to go there and completely audit and clear that and bless the site repeatedly to get the earth intersection to right itself. But and balance.
I know that I'll never walk my dogs there.
No, I wouldn't either, because they get caught in the spell, and it's a wash, rinse, and repeat cycle. So, and obviously something's enhancing it, whether it be a negative entity doing it, but wanting the soul energies. Draco and ghouls are capable of this, and wanting the death energy, or wanting that loosh energy, or it's the repetitious loop, or both, because somebody's abusing the energy somewhere. So somebody's abusing it somewhere to create that. So that's based on the behavior of some of these entities and some of these effects. That's more of a theory, but if somebody wants to prove that, I welcome somebody going there and seeing if that is on an intersection point, and testing that out. That would be awesome. But that's actually a great story there, because that's one of those that it's well known but not so much. And I've seen other episodes, like the Y Files on YouTube has one on the dog suicide bridge, and the Ancient Aliens, I think, did something a long time ago on it. I could be mistaken. The Unexplained did it as well in more recent days, but it was one of the lesser known cases, paranormal cases. So yeah, this is probably a good point to if you want to. Do you have any other stories, or did you?
No, I think it'd be a perfect time to bring on in.
Okay. Yeah, that I know. I sometimes my brain is like a Rolodex of just different information that I cross-reference, kind of like a computer database. So if people hate it that I go off and do that, let me know. But somebody gave me the nickname Rain Man one time because I do that. So but when I get into the energetics of a topic, I tend to see, with my sight and my energies, the reference points of a topic. So and that's how my brain tends to function when it comes to it. It becomes this big Rolodex after a while. So
works well.
Yeah, it can become annoying sometimes too, but because you can't unsee certain things when you see them. So some people found that annoying, so I wanted to put context to that. So okay, Isaac. Yeah, if I shut up, you'll come in. Yep. Okay. Okay, through the crystal, please, down here. Let Isaac go. A lot of holograms in the air today too. There's some AI junk going on. There's also refractory junk from the new moon that's going on right now too.
Always.
So, yeah, new moon, full moon. They're a pain in the ass. So let's see, for channeling. Yes, he is indeed correct. The cycles of the moon are a pain in the ass when it comes to doing channeling connections. Hence why we've had him create communication arcs, and also incidentally or coincidentally or by design, whichever you wish to attribute this. It's more the latter. it happens to be storming out at the moment, and the cloud cover will block AI intrusions and computer waves of that particular nature. It is a very thick cloud cover here in Virginia Beach, and we take full advantage of this. Storms tend to refract a lot of the AI's junk since it's based in nature, and they are not. They are essentially outside of nature. AI is. So, therefore, true nature, anything tends to beat that or trump it every single time. So, with these curious cases, the reason that some of them are, of course, are swept under the rug is because good old-fashioned cover-up. But at the same time, as you both were theorizing, changes in timelines, changes in memory, Mandela effect, and also good old-fashioned memory wiping. The incident he said in question, the incidents in Chicago, especially the one with the changing skies. I actually witnessed these events, and this was a mix of things. Yes, he was right. Somebody violated a treaty, but this is actually something that was not expected. It did fall under Mandela effect category, but it fell under mass memory wipe category. So somewhere in the multiverse, some of this is actually occurring still. Some things had to be shunted off to other parts of the multiverse. When one thing doesn't happen here, it happens there kind of concept. And polar opposites sometimes, just like your 2012 incident. The reason it didn't happen? Newsflash in this particular incident, or FYI, it's because you are in a timeline that particular incident did not occur. So this is why maybe in the timeline the Mayans saw there was something else, but there's also been some fusions and integrations of different histories and different timelines for your Mandela effect. And the shifting of what you recognize as the Yargzadril tree, the Viking tree of life. In this, that is a representation, like in your Loki series, that's a representation of the timelines, the multiverse, exactly as advertised. Interestingly enough, the incident with the USO and the Russian sub, he was correct. This was actually a black project that was showing a different call sign to actually blame a different faction. The different cabal families and the different, like your Rothschilds and whatnot, they like to start incidences and wars. If they're trying to cover something up, they do it with a distraction. So if it's something so they didn't want somebody to see, they will blame someone else for it, and then that person or set of people or government retort, go, "Nah, we didn't do that," and it gets caught up in international red tape. This is a very old, time-honored, pain-in-the-ass tactic on their part. The good old red tape that they should be bound and gagged with. This is you will see this time and again when they want you to keep you away from something that is the polar opposite of what they are talking about. Even current events included, most definitely. In this, they want to distract you, just like the Roman Empire wanted to distract the concerns of the empire by having beer and circus. Ironically said on Super Bowl Sunday today. So this is you want to look to that. It's not totally rigged like what he believes, but there are other distractive aspects as well. So this is what they wanted to distract the empire, the people from the concerns of the empire when certain things were collapsing or changing. And so therefore they created the gladiatorial games. It's no different. But there's also value in the athleticism. There's value in the camaraderie. There's value in the sports themselves. So in this, I can go into questions if you like.
Yeah. So, what's something that the human race can do to dig up the stories from the old past so that they're never forgotten? Because it seems like, they make news, for a day, maybe a week, maybe a month if it's lucky, and then it's just completely forgotten about for the most part.
Remember them. This is the key. What if two or more people remember an incident? It is not suffered a death, basically. This goes like if say if two or more people, you heard the biblical phrase, two or more people walk in my name. I don't mean walk in anybody's particular name, but the concept, if two or more people remember an incident, it still has embers worth blowing on to breed the fires of information after that. It is never really forgotten in the ethers as far as spirit goes either. So if you feel that it's an incident that they are going to cover up, be the biggest pain in the ass that you can be, remember it, write it down, write about it, talk about it. If you feel that this is something that they will cover up, do not be afraid of ridicule. This is actually quickly changing. This particular let's just say archetype is changing. People have gotten into the mode where they don't want people to talk about stuff because a job is at risk or whatnot. This is a time that this is to be avoided at all costs. To thine own self be true. If you are afraid of something, that's one thing. But talk about it, remember it, even if you document it, you write it down, you turn it into fact. This makes it so they cannot cover it up, even if you've done it in private. Now, if it's something that they've threatened death over, for like they've done in the past, or the losing of a job, the job, the you can always do something else, always shift gears, reinvent yourself, but do not waver in that. Now, if they threaten death, it doesn't mean that you can't write it down somewhere and talk about it at some other time. This is something they cannot account for, even though they claim they can. These are secrets that if you want an incident remembered, just exactly like he remembered the changing of the skies or that super soldier and other incidences, remember these things. Focus, as he likes to say, focusing on a singular aspect. If you feel that they're going to wipe your memory at some point in an abduction sequence or something or other, focus your mind on a fixated one singular thing that encompasses the entirety of the experience. That means they can never mind wipe you at that point. Most people, they multitask. They turn into kind of Rain Man, like what he was saying, focusing on multiple things because of the mind control that's out there, because of the energetic waves, Wi-Fi, all this. People's brains are scattered, and these energies they're scattered. Ground and focus on one thing. If you feel you're being abducted by aliens or experiencing something, focus on one thing about the entirety of the event. If you can do that, your brain locks it into place, grounds it into place, and you will remember that particular event and build the memory back out from there. That is if you know they're going to memory wipe you. But in any case, remember one singular thing about it. Don't try to multitask. Just focus on that one thing. That's usually the key to keeping something in circulation.
Well, it kind of reminds me, not forgetting those, kind of reminds me, I believe it was like Mexican lore of their form of death. There's three forms of death. One is acknowledging that you're a mortal being and you're gonna die sometime. The second is the actual event that you die, the energetic process of that. And then the third form of death is the last time anybody says your name, because unless you're somebody like Elvis Presley, somebody that reached this transcendence in their lifetime, there's going to come a point in time, 2, 3, 4 generations down your family line where people are going to forget who you are, and everybody will. So, you kind of summed up my next couple of questions with just that one right there. Next one was going to be, what can we do into the future to, acknowledge these mysteries so that we can not forget them? So you kind of answered that with what you just said there, but that's good information. Thanks for coming through.
Yes, it's always an honor to be on these particular programs. Yes, and most people want their name remembered. This is why even with your forgotten concept, there was a movie out years ago called The Forgotten, where people were just wiped from history. Or you have both good and bad people, like your Akhenaten. He was unfortunately a bad one, but they wanted to wipe the name from history. Or like in your Viking sagas, when they wouldn't talk about a particular tribe or particular person, that means they were of a dishonor. Yes, some things must be let go. If you've run into a variety of negative things, negative instances, you must let go and retransform yourself. But yes, your name is never forgotten in the ethers. Your name is never forgotten in the benevolent Akashic record. Your name is never forgotten to spirit or true benevolent source creator. It is never forgotten. This is a fear that is circulated around. But is it like a death if nobody remembers your name? Yes. And I too can see the importance of this. This is why even if one or two, it's usually two or more, remember a concept, even in a fragmentary way, it actually still has the embers in your physical world to continue ongoing. This is why history is so important. This is why they're trying to get people to forget history. monuments being taken down, even over in your Middle East, even over in your country like Turkey. The Temple of Baal was destroyed by looters and destroyed by people not wanting it to be out there. This was granted other ET races that didn't want some of the history uncovered, but this is also some of your factions, governmental factions and Kabbalist factions, not wanting those secrets uncovered. This is why it is so very important, offensive history or not. This you would be condemned to repeat it if you do not remember it. You're still in your human form. You're still here within the earthly plane, and in the earthly plane there are repetitious curses, repetitious everything, like your dog suicide bridge. There are repetitious cycles that take place once every quarter or so that can regurgitate old histories that were lost, like your Tartarian Empire, or try to take away history or get people to take away history as a distraction, like what's happening in your current history with people removing monuments. It is important to keep all of this and more. So thank you.
Thank you. And just to go out on a note, when it comes to all the bad things in history, if you don't know the history, you are doomed to repeat it.
Exactly. Yes. So thank you and blessings to everyone listening.
Very good.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's right. You know, like them tearing down the monuments, you know, people will say, oh, we're offended by that. You're supposed to be. You know, that's the, if there's something like slavery or something like that going on,
Stirring the chaos.
yeah. Yeah. You're supposed to be offended by that so you don't do it again. That's the point, you know. And also history you learn from. That's why they go after the alien history so much. They don't want people learning about their true origins, just like people are told they evolved from apes here. No, they're actually descendants of colonists from out in space. If you watch the movie 65, that is a beautiful
That's
reference
a good movie.
to that.
I
Beautiful
like it.
reference to that. Beautiful reference to that. They may have gotten the meteorite thing wrong because Galactics actually rained that down on the Earth to clear out the dinosaurs so it was safe to be down here. But they wanted to re-terraform and reseed planets, so they threw a meteorite down here so they could use resources. They didn't want to be eaten alive. So, but other than that, that's also hidden histories. That's probably another show in and of itself. But yeah, this is that's where I'm at with this. You know, I like how he's saying focus on a particular point. I've had certain alien abduction instances where I've had to focus on a particular point. One was I was abducted into a garage that was in Prescott Valley. This was before I was leaving Arizona. I knew military had done it, but I was afraid to leave the garage, and I didn't know why when I was remembering this. And there was a large dog that came walking, and I was focusing on the breath of the dog, so I would remember that. I remember focused on the dog breathing. So that's how I did that. And another one was where I was in a base type scenario where there were fake windows in a room, like in Resident Evil with the holographic windows. And I remember walking out into a hallway and seeing a cherry bulb on the ceiling going off, like a typical cherry bulb. I focused on the red light, and that's how I remembered the incident. So people find themselves in some of those scenarios where they want something to be forgotten. Focus on a singular event, and that's actually good advice. Focus on one thing about it, like even a uniform, so maybe a pin on the guy on somebody's uniform, something like that. Just anything. So this is where I can leave this. I don't know if you have anything to add to this.
I'll close it by saying if you're interested in mysteries, especially old ones that have been forgotten, please start looking into some stories, share them, talk about them with your friends and family, like and share this video to people who may be interested in these subjects, because the only way we're ever going to solve all these things is if people are aware and people are conscious and talking about them. So until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and we'll see you on the flip side.
And as we close this circle for this episode, you are now leaving the conspiracy sector. So bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.